Hello, today is Friday, August 8th, and welcome to episode 486 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm Jessica Jones, and I'm joined today by NSI Senior Fellows Amy Mitchell and Bishop Garrison and visiting fellow Algene Saldry. Okay, guys, it's kind of a fun Friday, or maybe it's a scary Friday. It's really, you guys tell me how worried I should be. Today, we're talking about recent headlines made by NASA about planning to speed up plans to put a nuclear reactor on the moon. That's right, a nuclear reactor on the moon. It's designed to run for at least 10 years, and it's going to be critical to providing power for a long-term vision for U.S. footprint on a lunar base. It's part of the broader Artemis program, which aims to return astronauts to the moon by 2027. If you guys don't know, it's been a while since Americans have made it to the moon, and the moon will eventually be a jumping off point for deeper space missions. Of course, just like any headline, it's not just about the US space exploration, it's also about competition with China. China has been rapidly scaling its own space ambitions, including plans for lunar energy, permanent outposts, and its own booming commercial space industry. Look out, Elon Musk. Almost seems like a first in time kind of thing going on. So we're all gunning for the lead here. We've got maybe a new space race. So, Bishop, I want to start with you. What's going on with this headline? What do we make of it? Can you explain a little bit? Like, what do we need to know?
I preface this as since it's Friday Fun Day, I do write professional science fiction, and I'm a nerd. So I
Did
love.
not know that before.
Yes, yeah, I am a full member of the Science Fiction Writers Association. So part of me gets excited like a little kid about these types of stories. But then the pragmatist in me that has worked with the IC, has worked in defense, starts to ask a bit more questions. So first, I do like the idea of having a big vision like this. Like, JFK, we do these things not because they're easy, because they're hard. That a big part of the space race, and had that continued, like we see in the Apple TV show For All Mankind, it could have led to just a variety of different types of evolutions of technology, of workforce policies, of all of these things that would have continued to help us maintain that competitive edge with our adversaries. However, the question is this the moment in which we really need to be pushing this type of policy? First, NASA has had a 20% roughly reduction in its workforce. We've seen consistent budget cuts, and I'll let my other colleagues here talk to that, but we've seen budget cuts for the agency in recent years. The design of of whatever type of nuclear reactor you're going to have to put up there is going to be different from what we can do on Earth. Here on Earth, we have an atmosphere, so you have air and you have water that are utilized to cool off the rods as they're producing the steam to create electricity. That it's just going to have to work much differently when you don't have an atmosphere, and when you need to be able to maintain your water reserves and keep lots of water there. And that's something that does not exist on the moon right now anyway. So you're talking about having to build out this massive infrastructure to start in order just to get this idea going. And on top of all of this, you're also talking about doing it within like 4.5 years. That is an incredibly quick timeline for something of this magnitude. So I want to cheer this on and say, oh, this is going to be so cool. This is going to be amazing. Then we can start talking about deep solar and then deep space exploration. But right now, I don't think it's the moment. And I'm just not sure that we have the science we need to in order to make this happen.
Yeah, Algene, do you agree with Bishop that this might not be the moment? Maybe great in vision, but where do we stand with what's going on with the administration? Do we have enough resources to get to the moon in 5.5 years?
Yeah, I mean, that is my question. The resources, I mean, where will the money come from? Obviously, we know this is going to cost many billions of dollars. And just this May, NASA canceled 41 space missions, right? 47% cut in those missions. And those spacecraft that were included in those cuts are the ones that are designed to track major forces shaping our planet, right? That they track rainfall and wildfires and hurricanes, right? These are important programs that were cut, and now that money is going to be used to put a nuclear reactor on the moon. I mean, people all over the world use the information gleaned from these spacecrafts that were just cut to help mitigate natural disasters, produce, weather resistant crops, right? And I can't even imagine what people are thinking about these cuts. I mean, we're here approaching the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, right? And what does a nearly 50% cut in funds to help mitigate the impact of future Katrinas while investing billions of dollars potentially in nuclear reactors on the moon years from now? This is going to, as Bishop said, take a long time. What does that say about our priorities as a country, right? Our budgets are what we invest in is what our priorities are. So as we're all national security experts on here. We certainly understand the China of it all. But what does that say about where our priorities are and our ability to support the American people to mitigate these natural disasters? We're cutting programs that really impact Americans here today in order to fund something very visionary. But what does that say about what our priorities are?
Amy, I know I can depend on you to bring the scary news. What do you think of emphasis on nuclear reactor on the moon? Like, what are the prospects for that? What are potentially some of the dangers we should consider? You're on mute, as you always are.
Sorry, the dogs. First, I love how we're actually taking this discussion seriously when it's clearly a distraction from the news. Like, let's all get real about this. A nuclear reactor on the moon run by Sean Duffy, who is dual-hatted just like the rest of the cabinet because we don't have a NASA administrator. We don't have a National Space Council that has been defunct now for almost 6 months of real experts who would actually talk about these issues and, to Bishop's point, really say, is this feasible? And is this the right thing? We've got China launching satellites day after day. We are behind. We're threatening Elon Musk, who is our biggest commercial and defense space provider right now. The administration is, I should say, who, if anyone could do this, it would be him. And let's all get real. We're not going to put a nuclear reactor on the moon. And we have an asteroid coming in 2032 that could possibly take out the moon. So let's get back to real policy and have serious discussions, to Algene's point, about what NASA is, what it does. To Bishop's point, what is our next quote unquote moonshot, right? And what do we really need to be working on? Is the moon a potential launching pad to deep space, to Mars, and focus on these issues rather than throwing something out there that then takes up air, takes away from the Epstein story, takes away from the big beautiful bill, takes away from August recess and everything else that the Trump administration doesn't want to talk about. And instead, we're now sitting here talking about nuclear reactors on the moon, which, as Bishop pointed out, technically is probably not a feasible idea.
Taking out the air.
And you still have the public-private partnerships that you really need to be focused on. So sorry.
No, I was trying to make a joke, as my space technical knowledge is limited to no air on the moon. I agree. You're welcome. I mean, I agree with everyone. We know that China obviously has ambitions, and Russia too, maybe even teaming up to have lunar energy plans in the 2030s. And we're just trying to get ahead. But whether Sean Duffy, interim NASA administrator, who has obviously no experience in any kind of technical field, I mean, DOT is enough, is going to prioritize and get us there. I don't know if that's the word I trust, right?
Well, the other part that you bring up, right? If we're talking about energy, and Musk has talked about this, what is the number one source of energy in space?
Sun.
So, but right? Sun, or AKA now dirty word, solar. And Musk has actually talked about using the sun's energy from space to power down here. So why aren't we talking about something innovative like that? We're not talking about it because of the word solar.
Yeah, well, in part, for the on the Earth, I mean, that's amazing. But the funny thing is, too, the idea is that they have to have a nuclear reactor to have a permanent footprint because you have 2 weeks of darkness at times on the moon as well. So, but there are things that you can do to bridge that gap that are practical, at least in the short term, that don't include having this discussion about a nuclear reactor on the moon. So I'm kind of playing both sides, I guess, of this.
Yeah,
but to your point, like, it's just the feasibility here is a big part of it. And as Algene said, just the cost, the sheer like resources that you're going to take in order to make it feasible. So,
well, to Algene's point, I think I was reading a stat. Most nuclear energy facilities have a 40-year lifespan, and those in the U.S. are already 40 plus years, right?
Yeah.
So what are we doing domestically here?
Our own infrastructure here.
Well, right.
And how are we going to launch a nuclear reactor? So we're going to put a nuclear reactor. Here's a great idea. We're going to put a nuclear reactor, basically a bomb, on top of, Bishop will fill in the numbers, how many pounds of explosives launching to space.
It goes back to the feasibility of this, because I don't even think you would do it that way. You would probably have to take it up in different packages and build and then assemble it on the moon itself. So that in and of itself creates all types of additional questions.
So you're still going to need to put the plutonium or
you're still going to have the nuclear material.
Literally explosives.
Yes.
So it's dangerous. It's impractical. It's quite scary.
Where are they going to build it? I don't want it in Florida. I don't want it in Florida.
And if some engineers and scientists tell me that I'm wrong and it's more feasible than I think, then I'm kind of like, you know what? Let's go. Let's figure it out. But let's do it in a way that is a bit more pragmatic to the current
We also
moment.
have had just its own complications, delays in the Artemis program generally. We still haven't, like, the moon, right?
We're still seeing We're still seeing rockets blowing up as they're taking off right now, too. And at a pretty decent like iteration. So that's also a concern.
Okay, so fun question to wrap us up. One, everyone has to answer. Do we think that we're ever going to have human colonies, and I'll just start with Americans, on the moon and or Mars? And if so, what year? Amy, I'm going first with you. You're first on my Brady grid.
I'm going to say yes, but I think that they'll be really small colonies, because if anyone has gone on like the Disney ride Mission to Mars, going into space sucks. Like, I mean, half the people will not make it. So I will say yes, but it's going to be like 2060.
2060. Okay, Bishop.
I say that we will likely see a permanent colony on the moon first. I don't think we're going to see it anytime before, honestly, at least 2040, if not 2050. Sometime between 2040 and 2050, something permanent. And when I say small, I'm talking at most to start 20 to 25 people.
Yeah. He's going with the Price is Right answer, by the way.
I know. I see. Okay, well, Algene,
one person by themselves on an asteroid. Yeah.
Algene.
I think, I'm just, because this is not my forte, I'm going to go with what Bishop said. I think, we can probably count on a couple people, maybe Katy Perry. I don't think we can get Gayle King back up there.
No Gayle King.
But, a few researchers. Yeah. It'll be something like an Antarctica, right?
What? So you're going with Bishop
I think that's probably a good take. Yeah.
2050-ish?
Sure.
Okay. Well, also not being a space expert, I was going to go with 2050 and the moon as well. So my gut reaction is correct. All right. Thanks, folks, for that fun Friday. That's a wrap. Thanks to Callie Crawley, Keelan Wolf. This is actually her favorite topic. Keelan, we needed you to weigh in here. Claude Jennings and the entire NSI team for their help in producing today's episode. Join us again on Monday, August 11th for probably not as fun of a topic, but another great episode of Fault Lines, NSI's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. Check us out on YouTube. And if you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.